Hello everyone, I am the Lore Explorer, and this video will contain spoilers for Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye. A few days ago, I had an idea. I was going to focus the artifact while in the simulation and then freeze time. Then, with the free cam, I'd use that to see what the artifact actually looked like when focused. And to my surprise, the 5 arms that close actually come together to form one single piece of glass surrounded by metal. And sure, that was always the implication of focusing it, but I thought it was really cool to see, so I made a post on YouTube and shared that around on other social media platforms and all of that, and a few people had actually mentioned that they've seen something like this before in the concept art for Outer Wilds, and it looked almost exactly like what I captured here. And sure enough, with some more help from the community, I was pointed towards the Echoes of the Eye concept art on a website called artstation.com, where it seemed a bunch of artists from Outer Wilds actually went there and posted their work for anyone to see for free. And while scrolling through this stuff, I actually found some stuff that blew my mind. Now, as I mentioned, this is all public on the website ArtStation, all free for you to download right now, but of course, all rights are reserved to Mobius Digital, and you'll see credits in each image of the original artist of that piece. Honestly, I just thought this stuff was way too cool not to share with you guys. Like, who doesn't want to know that the Parthians knit? Nah, I'm just kidding, but for some reason, I do really like these props here. The little fish knife looking thing that looks like it's being used to whittle a Nomad looking symbol. The radio looks really cool here, and look at that, knitting. I just can't. These are actually concept of player tools that I'm having a hard time placing a couple of. The bottom left is the radar dish used for postcards from space, but I can't really place the third one on the top row, the orange looking telescope, and honestly, I'm not even really sure what that could be used for, but it is interesting to think that we could have had other tools to use as a character at some point. And speaking of interesting things, look at this bad boy. At first, I thought I had clicked on the wrong link or something, but no. This image's file name is Parthian Radar, and seems to be wood placed in roughly the shape of a radar dish that's fitted with metal sheets to collect the signals that are bouncing off of it from space. I think it would have been awesome to see this thing just sitting on one of the poles of Timber Hearth or something. Maybe they were trying to track the quantum moon, I don't know. It just has me so intrigued. Now, this one here, it looks a little less like concept art, but it is from a concept artist or someone who posted concept art of the game. And I think this layout is pretty cool. In front, we seem to see a heart rate monitor, which I think is pretty standard practice for spaceflight, and an actual lever instead of a little escape button. And the #1 amenity any true Parthian spaceship would have, which is now my headcanon, regardless of whether or not this concept art or truth or what. And it's a kettle on the space dash. I mean, you need a good nice cup of chamomile while barreling through space. Plus, who doesn't love a good old bobblehead? Look at that thing. We also have a couple of prototype early stage design passes at our spaceship, and I promise some of these are going to blow your mind. On this page, we just see the actual ship on the bottom, and the rest aren't that different. At the top right is, honestly, it sort of looks a little bit more like a real life spaceship we'd see that's just kind of regular. It reminds me of the LEM a lot, the Lunar Excursion module. But check these ones out, guys. 2 through 7 are straight up spaceships made to look like bugs. And considering what we see in the 14.3 billion years later slide, this is such a cool thing to find in the concept art. Number 7 is literally just a fly, and it has a giant fishing rod off the back to catch giant sea creatures with, which, I mean, that would have really came in handy inside of a certain interdimensional plant. I mean, after seeing these, it's almost a shame that we ended up with the normalest ship that we did. But I ended up falling in love with it anyway, so I suppose it was pretty cool that they kept it simple. I thought that I'd highlight this though. This is the Parthian Satellite responsible for tracking and mapping our planet. There were a couple of passes that they made on it, and a couple of radio telescopes instead of the classical ones, multi-lens telescope, and 2 of them seem to actually have their own engine and fuel on board. But really, there isn't much to see here, just kind of thought they were cool. Now this, on the other hand, is awesome. we get to see a bunch of tools or props that they pitch for the Nomai's culture. Their forks and knives, which suggest they do in fact eat. We got combs to keep their nice goat fur nice and shiny, toys and blocks for the children, and even a dang Nomai telescope, which seems to be able to take and record things on scrolls like their message boards. It would have been awesome to find one of those things in game, and I'm even sure that we could have used it for a puzzle of some sorts. But well, I'm not entirely sure what to say about the blue stuff on the right. Some of that actually did end up making its way into the final version, or at least stuff similar to that, but I can't really imagine what most of it is supposed to be. This was actually a part of the last image, but I cut them up and enlarged them to give us a better view. This is one of my favorite finds in the whole bunch for some reason. I'm guessing the orb would keep track of like night and day and whatnot, and maybe even other celestial objects, and the two patterns on the base would rotate to tell the local time. Something like this may have came in handy in a time-based puzzle game. Cough cough, just saying. And now, I think we're starting to get into the really good stuff. Here, we see different styles they could have made the Nomai mask with, which, for some reason, is showing me that 6 things sticking out of the mask somehow makes it less scary looking to me. I don't know, the top 2 rows just look kind of spooky to me. And here, we see the suit of the Nomai, and the only real thing they changed up about this was the air supply tube from the tank to the mask was switched up to like a metal tube instead of this rubbery looking black one. And here's a blown up view of all the different suits that they thought about using for the Nomai. And some of the designs didn't even have a tank of air behind their head. But they ended up deciding to use a sort of simple design compared to these elaborate ones. But honestly, I couldn't even imagine Solemn being any different wearing anything other than the robe she has, so I kinda like it the way it is. Here, we see 7 different options for the advanced warp core as well. From some looking like a normal lantern, to some being all blocks, and this really kind of poetic yin and yang sort of one. But aside from all of that, what I find really cool about this is the detail on the final design, and not the etched glass bit, which would have been pretty cool, but the fact that they even write out that the connections are made out of copper. And the same goes with the wire running from the giant solar panels on Ember and Ash Twin to the, Ash Twin projects. That's made out of copper as well. I was even able to find some location concepts that are seemingly way different from what we find in the game. Here, we find what's marked the Brittle Hollow Observatory, and half of it seems to be mostly that. But on the right side, we see something marked ice benches and switches, as if maybe we were supposed to mess with these switches somehow to get in the observatory. It makes me wonder what they had in mind for that. And we have another sort of informational one here. The black strip and design in the Nomai escape pods are actually a protective plate for the bottom of the shuttle, since it'll likely always be crash landing in the event of use. After so much time, they kinda, oxidized and rusted, but it's sort of cool that the artist thought ahead about the protective shape and all that, or the protective plate. I thought that was neat. Digging deep through all of these different volumes, I was able to scrounge up what looks like maybe an old version of the Venturers, or maybe just Rebic and other villagers that we find in Timber Hearth, but other than the Pegleg guy and Rebic, not much of this seems to have made it into the game. And same goes for whatever this was supposed to be. It seems maybe the Parthians had a vague resemblance to bugs at some point in their conception. But really, what even is this thing? What are they wearing? What is that contraption? I don't understand. Also, I love it. And thank goodness I did decide to keep digging, cause check this out. Early concepts of the Nomai, and we can tell that these are the Nomai and not the Alks because they have 3 eyes. But check some of the ones out at the top. They almost look like they'd turn out as a species of Grim Reapers if they picked that one. I mean, the game would have been so different, would have had such a different vibe if the game started out by our memories being stolen by what looks like Death's little brother. Forget Echoes of the Eye, the whole game would have needed a horror warning after that one. But with that said, a lot of these do look like the really smart, nice, enlightened species that's coming to teach you something and, make your life better, so that's pretty cool. But like I said, I do like the Nomai that we have. I'm glad they settled on the robe goat folk and not the, scary black robe looming figures. Another cool thing I was able to find, although they internally named the Alks Ghost Bird and the community named them Alks, it seems the artist decided to simply call them inhabitants. And I actually really like this, and I'm considering adopting that as their name, at least personally. So let me know what you all think about that in the comments below. Also, there was a time when the inhabitants may not even have had antlers. They almost look kind of dopey without those antlers. Almost. And again, we have a long lineup like we had with the Nomad of potential Alk designs. And essentially, we just have a heavy metal band lineup here, dressing in spooky robes and just imagine a guitar in there and it's perfect. Personally, I'm glad they wore thick robes to cover up their lanky body because that would have been creepy to see. And double goes for this concept. Imagine the first time you ever saw an inhabitant that they had antlers, and you look over at them and they have this long lanky body and what sort of looks like what I imagine dragon masks to look like. No, thank you. The incredibly tall, antlered, lanky, red-eyed, creepy bird person is enough thanks. And you know what, after all this cool stuff, I don't even know why I'm mentioning this, but I kept calling these single antlers tied to a stick a spear, but apparently they're boat poles to push their rafts along in the water, and it even has a conventional oar right next to it, and you know, maybe I'm silly, but I would have never in a million years guessed that this was a boating utensil. I mean, that looks like a spear to me, 100%. But I am wrong, and that's not the last time I'm going to be wrong in this video, so stay tuned to tell Lore Explorer he's wrong. I also found something else that's sort of strange. I don't think we ever see these in game, but I think the ones on the right are probably like, you know, cracks at projectors, but, you know, I don't know if they chose any one of these. I can't really remember, but the very first one with the ball, I have no idea what that is. Does anybody have any guesses of what that may be? You know, leave it in the comments below if you do. This one isn't all that cool either, but it actually names the strange totems that we find in the simulation that pull us towards them when we shine light on them, and they call them Grappler Totems. So now we know what to call those. We can refer to them as Grappler Totems, yay! Another one of the cool things that I found in the concept art is actual gameplay mechanic concepts. This one is from Ian Jacobson, and it's suggesting that we use light as a sort of Morse code language to get certain symbols to appear on the wall. We also see a little base as well, where we'd plug in our lantern and a dome would close in around us, revealing constellations depicted on the ceiling or inside of the dome. And lastly, a concept in which locations would display different symbols depending on the time of day and direction of light in the area. But the one central theme here is this is all, you know, forming around light. It all evolved around this concept of light, which makes sense for this DLC, and I like that it was sort of cohesive from the start. Another design that I found was cool is the design for the light staff. It seems that at one point, the side of the staff had 2 eye slots as if you were putting them on like goggles or something. And in the end, it ended up with a sort of mix between staff A and C, but I think it's pretty cool anyway. The 2 eye setup would have been awesome to see in the game though. One last piece of informational goodness from the concept art, where you get to tell Lore he's wrong one more of many times, is the artist does indeed call the giant panels on the outside of the stranger solar sails. As much as I don't want them to be standard solar sails, that seems to be what the artist called them on their sketch for it. So even if they do have some amazing sort of advanced function that we don't know about, well, I guess we can just call them solar sails for now anyway. And last but not least, behold what seems to be an early design concept for the stranger itself, where the whole thing seems to be cobbled together by wood. It really would have been a sight to see this thing flying throughout the solar system, but if I'm being honest, I think this stranger is, you know, pretty awesome. I think we got a better deal than this. So, I don't know. It's still cool though, I do like this design. Sadly, that's just about all I can find for concept art though, and I suppose I did actually find a lot here. The Nomad props, the Nomad design concepts, and our ship design specifically were so cool to see. But how amazing would it be to have an actual Outer Wilds concept art book from Mobius? They probably have tons of art that served its purpose during the design process, but have just been sitting in a folder gathering dust somewhere for a long time. But wow, would I love to see every single doodle related to this game. If they put that in a book, I would buy that. Twice. Of course, I'm going to link each artist ArtStation page in the description below. And a huge thank you to them for publicly sharing that art for anyone to see. If you enjoyed the video, or maybe saw something that you found interesting, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It's a good way to get Outer Wilds content digitally delivered. As always, a special thank you to the members here on the channel. In months like last month, when views are sort of going slow on the channel, the support I get from you guys is amazing. I can't thank you all enough. So thank each and every one of you. And as usual, this is the Lore Explorer diving deep into the internet so you don't have to. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.